I am so pleased to announce that we are doing this wonderful panel this evening, The New Africa, a fresh look through a new prism. Our moderator for this evening is Teresa Clarke, who is the chairman and CEO of Africa.com, the leading website providing news and information about Africa to over 2 million monthly visitors from over 200 countries around the world. She's an investment banker and internet entrepreneur and has been doing business in Africa for over 20 years. Ms. Clarke was the first African-American woman to serve as a managing director in the investment banking division of Goldman Sachs, where she led corporate finance and mergers and acquisition deals for corporate clients in the industrials and real estate sectors for over a dozen years. She earned her AB in economics cum laude from Harvard College, an MBA from Harvard Business School, and a JD from Harvard Law School. She's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. She has earned numerous awards for her business and philanthropic work in Africa, including 2 awards from the South African government, and was named one of the 25 most influential women by the Network Journal. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for this evening, Teresa Clarke.
Well, thank you very much, Cheryl. I first really have to give honor to Cheryl for the wonderful job and leadership she's provided in pulling this weekend together. And she and I spoke many months ago about doing something with respect to Africa. And when we first talked about that, it seemed as if the path might be sort of a traditional sort of what are the opportunities and issues in Africa. And I said, no, we have to do something completely different. I said, and we want to make sure that everyone sees Africa that I know and see every day in my life. And so we talked about what would be the dream team of people that we would have join us. And I said, it would be fantastic if we could show what's happening in technology and get Funke. It would be fantastic if we could show the world of fashion and have Ozwald. And it would be wonderful if we could have Billionaire from South Africa, Patrice Motsepe. And Cheryl went off to do that, and here we are. So thank you all for being here. And thank you, Cheryl. I feel as if I'm amongst friends, and so I guess I should reference in some way their biographies, but I know them quite well, so I'm going to just do my best to tell you what I know of these wonderful people. And then we have some videos, and all the technology's teed up. Okay, well, I'll start with Funke. I think that Funke is just the most amazing woman. She is my role model and someone whose story I love to tell. Even if we weren't sitting in this room, it's a story that I tell to all young black women about what is possible, because I think that Funke really has to be a tremendous role model for black women globally. I don't know anyone who's done anything close to what she's done. Funke was educated in Nigeria with her first degree. She then came to the United States and earned an engineering degree at Columbia. And so she does the hard science. She's not just like some of the business folks. She knows the real, when she's in the technology space, she knows how that stuff works, not just how to run the books. And so she went into management at Verizon and came to understand the broadband space and did very well in corporate America, but saw a vision much bigger and looked at what she was learning and saw where the internet was going and how important broadband was, and said, we need this where I come from, we need this in West Africa. And this woman went out and raised $245 million, and she brought broadband underwater from Portugal to West Africa. I mean, is that phenomenal? Is that phenomenal? I'm just so proud of her. I'm just so proud of her. So I'm just thrilled that Funke has been able to join us, and can't wait to ask you some questions in this group. Thank you. The next person is Ozwald Boateng, who I've had the pleasure, he's the one I know least on this panel. I've been to his fashion show in New York Fashion Week, and I've seen all of the models wearing his clothes. I've been by his shop on High Street in London. And he has founded a foundation the Made in Africa Foundation, where he's able to demonstrate his commitment to Africa. And he partnered with the New York Times, with the publisher of the New York Times, Arthur Sulzberger, and Arthur hosted a big lunch for him last year, and I had an opportunity to go and learn about his foundation there. And so I'm very, very pleased to have you here. I know that you have addressed some very important people globally, including some very famous African-American men in the media in this country. You'll tell us more about that in a little bit. And by way of introduction, I think we have a little video to show about you. So if we can hit the technology, do we get to see it?
In Soweto, Johannesburg, South Africa, the heartbeat of the South African civil rights and
Don't we want to see it? We're going to come down here and we're going to watch too.
Meaning of also divinely powerful. This is the sort of name that I'll give to the boy because I'm convinced he's going to be great.
Introducing the best dressed street in the world. Savile Row was founded here a few years after the Battle of Waterloo. Drive to succeed finally had him located in Savile Row by the age of just 28.
What's special about Savile Row is its history and what it represents. I mean, let's face it, the suit was born on the streets.
He likes men to feel great about themselves, to put on the best they possibly can.
When he won the Oscar, it was like I was winning as well.
Mr. Money would like to compliment you on your elegance.
Oh,
L'eleganza è un'eleganza interiore anche.
Setting up shop in Savile Row, the heart of London's upmarket tailoring, he made sure men's fashion would never be the same again.
My whole principal design is based in creating beautiful clothes for men, and that's what I work for.
So when I'm in a Boateng, I know I mean business.
To create if you can't feel. The touching is also understanding.
Ozwald makes me sexy, so when I want to be sexy, I go see my man.
If he can get me in a suit, he can get anybody in a suit.
But where it wears it makes them feel better about themselves. It enhances who the person is.
I'm very proud for Paris.
I've been brought up with an obligation to do something I want to try. It's about scale and involvement, and I want to see Africa move forward.
Do you think Africa is poor? Did you stand up for this? Did you think that?
Now, if you think Africa is rich, stand up. It's time for Africa to believe in itself again. Belief is a cornerstone of being a man. If you don't have belief, you don't have anything. I love what I do. I love what I do.
If you don't mind us dispensing with some formality, I'll ask our panelists to stay where they are so they can see the next video, because we have another video. But I will introduce the man who's sitting in the fourth row, Patrice Motsepe, who I've known for many years. And Patrice, as you know from his biography, is one of the leading businessmen in South Africa, in South Africa's core industry, mining. He's been extremely successful in the mining space, and as well has been ranked by Forbes. He is the richest black South African as a billionaire. We count billionaires, by just a couple in our country. It's always amazing when I talk about Africa, and we recognize that there are 5 or 6 billionaires in Africa, whilst we have 1, sometimes 2 here in America. It's very important that we have an appreciation for all the important things that are happening, but not only that, but not only about the money, but I think the thing that's so important about Patrice is the leadership that he's demonstrating. He has joined Bill Gates and Warren Buffett in making a commitment to giving away half of the wealth that he has created to charity, which is just a phenomenal matter. And as I introduce Patrice, I must say that I've recently had some exchanges with his wife, and so I sent her an email and asked her if she might be here this weekend, accompanying Patrice, knowing that he was going to be speaking and getting an award. And Precious wrote back to me and said, well, I will be there, but I'll be there on my own right because, I'm affiliated with the Kennedy School. So I want to be very clear. If you please stand up for one moment, Precious. So I'd like to acknowledge you as the wife. So we also have a great video to learn a bit more about Patrice. We'll stay in our formal mode. I'll come sit out there. I want to see the video also. And then I'll invite all 3 of you back up to the front. Thank you.
Patrice Motsepe was born in Soweto, Johannesburg, South Africa, the heartbeat of the South African civil rights and pro-democracy movement, and the home of 2 great South African Nobel Peace Prize recipients, former President Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu. The son of a prominent business family, Patrice Motsepe was exposed to business from the age of 6. During school holidays, he would stand behind the counter and work in the family-owned businesses, honing what would later become his entrepreneurial skills and an acute sense of business competitiveness. The other attributes that he got from his parents as a young boy was the sense of giving and helping the poor. He often witnessed his parents supporting the needy and underprivileged members of their community. This culture and philosophy of helping the poor and those in need was ingrained in him from an early age. After graduating from law school, he joined one of the largest law firms in South Africa, Bowman Gilfillan, and became its first black partner, a huge achievement at the time for a young black man in South Africa's history. He was also a visiting attorney in the United States under the American Bar Association program, with law firm McGuire, Woods, Battle and Booth in Richmond, Virginia. Patrice started a contract mining company called Future Mining in 1994 with 30 employees. In 1997, he purchased 7 old and marginal gold mines from Anglo Gold. This led to the formation of ARM Gold, which was subsequently listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in 2002. In 2003, ARM Gold merged with Harmony Gold to form one of the 10 largest gold mining companies in the world by production. He thereafter formed African Rainbow Minerals, ARM, in 2004, which is a diversified mining company which owns and operates platinum, iron ore, manganese, nickel, coal and copper mines in sub-Saharan Africa. The ARM Group currently employs 65,000 employees and continues to be involved in the gold mining industry through Harmony Gold, which operates gold mines in South Africa and Papua New Guinea. He also diversified into financial services in 2004 through the formation of Ubuntu Botho, which is a strategic partner of Sanlam. Through this partnership, he is involved in 17 African countries and in India, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Patrice is also the recipient of numerous local and international business and leadership awards. In 1999, he was recognized as a global leader of tomorrow by the World Economic Forum. In 2002, he was voted by the CEOs of the top 100 companies in South Africa as South Africa's Sunday Times Business Leader of the Year. In the same year, he was awarded the Ernst & Young Best Entrepreneur of the Year award. He received the South African Jewish Report Special Board Members Award for Outstanding Achievement in 2004 and was also awarded the Jewish Achievers Award in 2013. He is also a member of the J.P. Morgan International Council, the World Economic Forum International Business Council, which is made up of 100 of the most highly respected and influential chief executives from all industries worldwide, and was the founding chairman in 2013 of the BRICS Business Council, and was awarded the BRICS Business Council Outstanding Leadership Award. In 1999, the culture of giving to the poor and underprivileged communities that Patrice was exposed to as a young boy was formalized when he established the Motsepe Foundation, which is a lifetime commitment to giving to the people of South Africa, Africa, and the world. The Motsepe Foundation was later followed by another monumental milestone when he and his wife, Dr. Precious Motsepe, joined the Giving Pledge in 2013, which was started by Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates. Patrice committed to give half of the assets of the Motsepe family to the poor during his lifetime and beyond, and that of his wife.
It was a wonderful thing to hear how the Motsepes really, as a family, as part of their moral conviction, believe in giving back. I was really thrilled by it, and I want to congratulate them.
In excess of $50 million was allocated in 2013 to various individual and community upliftment projects in education, health, women and youth businesses, religious and worker organizations, traditional authorities, sports, arts, and music. The Motsepe Foundation has also established 26 community-based development forums throughout South Africa, which meet regularly to identify local upliftment and development projects, which will improve the living conditions of poor and marginalized community members. Approximately 70 community-based meetings took place over the last 18 months throughout South Africa, and which were attended by approximately 150,000 people. Patrice took time from his busy schedule to attend every one of these meetings. Another activity which is very close to his and Precious's hearts is the Christmas Toy Distribution Project. Children from poor communities throughout South Africa have received over 1 million toys over the past 7 years. Patrice Motsepe is deeply committed to the poor and is often heard to be saying, "The plight of the poor is as much our responsibility as is the prosperity of our businesses."
Funke, Ozwald. Okay. Well, there's a lot there. We could spend the rest of this afternoon chatting with each of you individually about the amazing accomplishments that you have. So we'll have to use our time very wisely since we have just about 40 minutes to talk, and then Cheryl's asked me to hold 10 minutes at the end. So Funke, corporate America, African woman, trying to decide what to do. Tell us, can you compare your experience being a black woman in corporate America, like I'm sure many people in this room have experienced, and what you went on to do when you went home? How do you think about the two?
Interesting question. Corporate America. I guess the one key difference that stands out is the structure here. The rules of the road are clear, and the route to success, though plagued with roadblocks, is perhaps better defined. In Africa, there's lots of opportunity, lots of challenges, but there's really no roadmap. You know, there's a lot of invention and ingenuity that you have to bring to how the opportunities could be addressed to create value. Here, the value map is a little more obvious. And so that's a challenge, different kind of challenge in how you position yourself for success in both environments. There you're creating the structure to ensure you make things happen, and here you're working within well-established structures to understand how you can contribute value into that process.
Now, a lot of people might think that working in Africa, that there's a lot of sexism in the business world in Africa relative to the West. Tell us what it's like being a woman leading a company in Nigeria.
I don't particularly find more sexism in Africa, or perhaps so single-mindedly focused on what I'm trying to achieve that I don't notice that there is more sexism. I think there's work to be done, and I set about doing it. But I also think Africa has a culture of women working, not necessarily in in formal business and in positions of authority, but African women have worked on the farms, they have been traders and merchants, and we've all seen our mothers work. So that's not so much a surprise. I think to some, and perhaps where I note the most surprise is within, when you provide strong leadership or direction, and people are surprised that as a woman, you are setting the bar so high. But that's what it takes to succeed in business, and it shouldn't be any less because I am a woman, because our business also needs to succeed. So, but I don't particularly find, and I've also been an engineer, a minority in that sense, in both my education and most of my professional life, so probably have developed somewhat of a thick skin to being the other.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation I would just make, looking at the people that I know in Africa, and especially in Nigeria, seeing how the wives of very successful men work. I mean, we have one right here. I mean, your wife is quite engaged and has her own fashion business and is very active. And you'd find that a lot of the wives of similarly situated people in the United States, I hope that no one wants to give me a hard time about this, but you find that a lot of similarly situated women in the United States don't work. And that's one of the things I find so interesting when I'm traveling around Africa, is to see that women work. No matter what the husband does, no matter how successful he is, women have their own identity and work. And I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Ozwald, when you were a little boy, how did you imagine growing up to become a fashion designer?
That's a funny question, because my dad was a teacher, and he didn't really have much time for the arts. So his whole plan for me was very different. So I kind of upset his plan for me. But I stumbled into it, to designing clothes. I was 16 studying computer programming in London, right at the beginning, early 80s. So it was right at the beginning. I thought that would be my future. And I met this girl, and I fell hopelessly in love with her, and she was an artist who could paint and draw with both hands. Exactly. Women. Women are always the reason. So she was doing a collection for college, and she asked me to help her design it and put it together. I said, "You're crazy. I can design a program. I can't do this." But no, she convinced me, and I did, and I had a natural talent for it. And my father probably didn't think I'd take this up, but my father said to me a very important lesson, he says, in life. He says, whatever comes easy to you in life, stick with it. So I did. Of course, he was a bit annoyed at the fact that was fashion. But in the end, he accepted it, and the rest is kind of history now.
You know, it's funny to hear you say that, because again, we're trying to relate your experiences to what I know a lot of the African American alumni at Harvard have experienced. And I imagine there are a lot of people here whose parents have middle class backgrounds, like your father. We were told to be teachers, doctors, lawyers, and really didn't have the freedom to go out and pursue things in the arts. I mean, to what degree, has it been difficult for, before, I mean, now that you have these fancy videos and everyone wants to, success has many fathers, but, in your early days as an African man, how did your family take it? You're from Ghana originally.
That's right.
You still have a lot of family
Yes,
there.
yeah, absolutely.
How did that family think about this African man, making clothes?
Well, I mean, so I grew up in the 70s in London, which was a very particular time. There was actually a lot of racism at that point. And, the school I went to was probably me as 3 kids were black and everyone was non-black, right? So I developed a way of being, which was whatever I believe I want to do, I'm just going to do it. And so I never allowed any barriers to distract me from something that I desired I wanted to do. My father was very instrumental in that, because it was a difficult time then. And so when I decided I wanted to design clothes, I just said, well, look, another reason why actually I kind of wavered towards tailoring is for the first few years when I decided fashion was what I wanted to do, I had to kind of find a way of getting it past my dad, you see. And so I couldn't do the crazy fashion stuff, but yeah, I had to be cool amongst my contemporaries. So it was a bit of a balancing act, which is why I kind of developed this style around tailoring. So I had to kind of keep my dad happy and also make my point in terms of creativity and design. So that's kind of why I fused those two worlds. And then I thought to build my name, I had to bring something unique to the world of menswear. So at the time, when I was 16, I've always been very ambitious. So I thought who's the leading men's designer at the time was Giorgio Armani. And he made his name for unstructured suits. So I decided that I'd put the structure back in. And so to achieve that, because I was so young, a friend of mine told me about Savile Row. So I went down and visited it, and I sort of said, look, it's going to be full of dusty old men. I mean, why am I going to go down this street? But I did, and I met a very famous tailor there called Tommy Nutter, who used to make clothes for the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And he really liked what I was wearing. And he kind of explained me the concept of bespoke tailoring, and I realized that's what I needed to do, was kind of bring that tradition of make into my design, and that I could create something new and unique. The advantage is that if I worked with Savile Row as a concept, which is older than America, then I could kind of use that as a history to protect me as this new creative, and that allowed the door to be open for me, which is very important, because before I talked about myself, I talked about Savile Row, and that actually offered a lot of protection for me as I developed as a creator.
That's great. Patrice, we saw your video. We saw how it started off with pictures of you and Mandela. And I think that for many people who don't know a lot about South Africa today, you say South Africa and the first thought is Mandela. I think that it would be interesting to hear how you translated from being an activist. I'm not sure that everyone appreciates that many of the successful business people in South Africa today come from an activist background. You started off serving time in detention, I presume, and
I think everybody was an activist.
Yes, everyone was an activist.
Yeah.
I mean, so how do you make that transition from fighting against government to being a businessman? Most people outside of your country rarely have that range of experiences in one life.
Well, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. My father was an entrepreneur. We grew up in a business family. It's very interesting that we were always taught at home that even during the years of apartheid, mentally we were always free. Intellectually we were always free. I mean, there were challenges, there were limitations and restrictions as to where we could do business, where we could live, and which universities we could go to. My wife and I had to apply to the government at the time to go to what was historically a white school. But entrepreneurship is something that's an integral part of Africans. I mean, you go to Nigeria, you go to Kenya, you go to Ghana, the ability to make things, to sell them for a profit, to be sustainable is part of African culture. So we were confronted at the time with the need to introduce democracy, to create an environment where our people could not just be politically free, but also to be part of an economic dispensation that would allow them to grow and to realize their dreams.
You know, thinking about the pledge that you've made to give away half of your wealth, as you know, I started a scholarship program in South Africa and have had the benefit of many people such as yourself supporting that. But when they have supported it, they've also talked about how much they have to do, not in a structured context, but because so many people have family and cousins and relationships that once you're the one who's been successful, there are a lot of people making demands. So how do you think about managing that range of demands that are on you? You're successful, everybody wants something from you. How do you decide that you're going to have a structured program to give that money away?
Anybody who wants anything from me, I send my wife to meet with them. She's much more compassionate and much more effective than I am. But let me tell you something that's important. I mean, you know, we grew up in a business family. You know, funny enough...
What were the businesses that your grandfather and your father had?
The sort of businesses that they were restricted to own by law. I mean, they could only own a mom and pop store, a general dealer, sell the sort of goods that the people in the township required. So, you know, we saw our parents give and give with a sense of happiness and a sense of joy. At a very young age, we were taught that you know, even under apartheid, that we were in a very privileged position because, you know, the family businesses were doing well, and my father was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the black community, and that allowed us to go to better schools. But there was always an emphasis. You must always remember that you are what you are because of the communities, because of the societies, and because of those people, those poor people who bought from our businesses. And this is what, I don't know, 20, 30 years before Mandela was released. And you know, my wife and I have committed to give half of what the family owns. You know, even after I've given away half of what we own, my family will be comfortable. My wife and children will be comfortable. The real heroes in Africa are those poor people, those grandmothers, those grandparents that we are exposed to at a very young age, who really give money to their children and to their grandchildren, and in the process, so that they can go to school, but in the process, you know, they don't have meat at night when there's food to eat. It comes at a huge, huge sacrifice. Those are the people who inspire so many of us, and those are the people who've always reminded us that, you know, we must always remember that not only that we are part of the sacrifices of so many, but more importantly, that our future and our children's future depends on a commitment to help those who are less fortunate.
One more question for you. We think about giving to Africa, and much of the world thinks about giving to Africa. And so this new notion of philanthropy that is generated from Africans to Africans, how do you think that that's going to change the landscape of donor aid, of the projects that are being done, the choices that people make as to what to fund, what not to fund? Do you see that the projects that you are giving to have a different profile than the ones that might receive donations from USAID or other foreign donors?
You know, the single most important thing that Africa needs is trade. It's education, it's investments, it's partnership, it's sustainability. Aid provides assistance in the short and in the medium term. We need aid. But we've got to get Africa long-term to be independent, to be sustainable, so that the entrepreneurs, the businesses, the leaders in Africa, the economy can be in a position to largely create an environment. Of course, education is crucial, but create an environment for growth. So, you know, we give on the continent, we also give globally. And often we give globally because we recognize that over many, many years, people in this wonderful country and in Europe have contributed immensely. And challenges are great, but we are much more optimistic. We were optimistic when things looked very, very bad, when we had a government that was making it very clear to us that this economy that the country was never going to be in the hands of the majority. And of course, the most beautiful thing is we had a Nelson Mandela, and also realized that we had no future if the white South Africans didn't have a future. So we've got to create an environment for everybody. But the key issue is that we've got to, we do our humble contribution in philanthropy. And of course, you saw that what we are trying to emphasize is, particularly in South Africa, is to get the poor people. I mean, last week I was at a meeting, a venue similar to this, where there was about 3,000 people. And the purpose of that meeting is to say, we're going to make a humble contribution of, I don't know, $2-3 million. You must tell us where it should go. Give people, empower them, and let them take ownership. And they will tell you, let's focus on education, focus on health, focus. But the focus is on sustainability. We don't want to keep giving, what they say in the Bible, I don't want to give you a fish. I want to teach you how to fish him. Maybe even give you the equipment to go and fish him.
Good, very good. Funke, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, we're talking about poor people, we're talking about transformation and change. You're bringing internet to West Africa. Tell us a little bit more about MainOne, what you're doing, how the internet is being used in West Africa, and how you see it playing a role in development. How will the internet help poor Africans?
Okay, no, great. MainOne was founded to bridge one of those critical gaps with respect to the availability of the internet in West Africa. And that was connectivity between West Africa and the rest of the world. And so what we did was build a submarine cable, which is largely how most of the world is connected, or communications flows around the world between West Africa and Europe, and thereby we could interconnect our part of the world with others. Now, the vision for that and what it's bringing about, we're being operational now for about 4 years. We operate in 5 countries in West Africa that we're providing services to directly. And the internet penetration in those markets over those years has, each of those markets more than doubled. I think the number of internet users in a country like Nigeria today, where you have about 30% penetration, is about 50 million, which when you look at literacy rates and all of the factors is quite a significant number. But the possibilities are still largely untapped. I believe we're only just scratching the surface. What you're starting to see, though, is the facilitation of new business models and a new type of economy and the creation of so many jobs. So when you look at in Nigeria, there are probably 10 large e-commerce companies today generating hundreds of millions of dollars, either in retail, in travel services, there's some in jobs. It is very heartwarming because a few years ago, such businesses could not exist. In addition, the banking sector is largely moving online. People are moving money, electronic transactions. So it is incredible because you are creating new services and new jobs and empowering people and changing lives. Finally, for me personally, and we support to create these businesses. There are several incubators developing across West Africa, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in which we were very much involved, software incubators. I think just a few weeks ago we had Demo Africa with Microsoft looking at young technology companies and providing them with support technology support, capital to launch their businesses. So that's really heartwarming. But the biggest opportunity yet, I think, is education. When we look at the quality of education in Africa, when we look at the educational outcomes, when we look at what access to the internet can do in terms of massively online education and the transformative powers thereof, I truly believe that is the challenge we have to overcome, getting good, affordable internet access to more of our youths so that they can be empowered, they can shape their own outcomes, they can have access to the same quality of information and learning that people have in developed world, and thereby generate better outcomes for themselves. I think the studies already show from the World Bank that every 10% increase in internet penetration yields more than 1% growth in GDP. So the basic economics are there. But really, it's putting it in terms of those lives that are transformed and the opportunities that we know access to learning creates. And I think therein lies the greatest opportunities for the internet in Africa. And that's why it's so critically important with the large youth population that we have and the need for job creation to provide improved access.
Tell us about some of the internet companies in Nigeria. There's the big e-commerce one, starts with a J.
Jumia.
Jumia. Tell us
Yes.
about Jumia and what they're doing.
Well, Jumia is in retail. Two young guys and an incubator out of Germany, Rocket Internet. In 2 years, they just seem to appear out of nowhere. But they're one of the large retail players in Nigeria today, and they're privately held. Rocket just did an IPO in Germany within the past 2 weeks. MTN has taken a position in Rocket as well. I'm not sure what the specific numbers are if they are disclosed, but I am sure that they are doing more than 100 million. And I'm sure the growth rates are such that they're doubling or tripling every...
They're kind of like the Amazon.
It's kind of like the Amazon of here. There are two of them that are leading that race. There's another one, Konga. And there's a sister company, Dilgite, quite close to Sim Shagaya, who's a young Nigerian entrepreneur who's driving that business. And you know, the interesting thing is it's not just about the e-commerce, it's the supporting structures. So it's driving the growth of logistics companies to help do fulfillment, new logistics models, new storefronts for delivery and pickup, new payment models, because it's cash on delivery and the security around that, or a card on delivery now that we have more online banking. And so it's really transformative in the economy. There's Waka Now, which is doing travel, again, growing in leaps and bounds. There is...
Expedia of Nigeria.
Yes, exactly, yeah, Waka, exactly, the Expedia of Nigeria. And really critical because with the new online banking systems, it's allowing people who want to travel locally and internationally in Nigeria to now go online, make their travel reservations, pay in local currency, and book their hotel in Europe or anywhere around the world, and know that all that is taken care of. So people don't have to collect foreign exchange, which is the old way you used to do it, line up at a bank to get dollars and to hold those dollars, or I guess whoever still uses traveler's checks or whatever those things were. So it just shows, so finally people can live lives and you know, enjoy the benefits and the quality of service that you would get in an advanced economy. And you know, every day you turn around and there are one or two or more of these companies being launched, which is also phenomenal just in terms of job opportunities for young people coming out of college. So that's really great.
And I think one final thing that I've recently learned about that I think is quite interesting are the new national identity cards that are coming out in Nigeria that are being issued like literally as we speak. They just started issuing in September, as I understand.
Yes.
And so your what would be the equivalent of a social security card in the United States, each one has a little chip for MasterCard.
Yes.
And so you can carry money on that card and make transactions.
Yes. Indeed, we're all really looking forward to that because, as you know, having an electronic or virtual economy without a strong identity system lends itself to a lot of abuse and fraud. So I think with the new identity system that's being implemented by the government, I think it really lends itself to further growth and acceleration. PayPal did come into the market just a few months ago and are signing up quite a lot of subscribers who are opening PayPal accounts tied into their Nigerian bank accounts. So I think all these developments say really the growth potential is phenomenal when you look at current penetration rates relative to what the full potential is.
Good. Well, the theme here has been development. We're talking about the Motsepe Foundation, the role that the internet is playing. Let's come to you, Ozwald, and talk about your foundation, the Made in Africa Foundation. Tell us more about how you came about founding it, what its mission is, what you're doing.
Well, Made in Africa really is, it's actually two things. First, I think Africa has had terrible PR, right? And so I think it's time there was a new picture shown about the potential of Africa. So that's the first point of the foundation. And then the second point is I'm a big believer that infrastructure is the key to Africa's future because we just don't have any infrastructure. I mean, just listen to the story here of just bringing some infrastructure and the impact. And so we just need more of that across the continent, but not just in telecommunications, just in urban environments and in energy. We know that energy is a big problem, yet we have so much energy, raw material energy on the continent. And the other factor is probably 60% of all undiscovered resource on the planet sits in Africa. So this concept of poverty makes no sense. So the issue is, for me, Made in Africa Foundation is really about how do we take advantage of that resource, and that's about building our infrastructure.
I have to just add to the point that you made. I loved the piece in your film where you asked the Ghanaian children, how many of you think that Africa is poor, and how many of you think that Africa is rich? Yeah. I did a TED Talk earlier this year where I made that exact point that you made. You know, it's astounding to think that Africa has something like 2/3 of the world's raw materials. We have something, 20% of the world's oil, some over 50% of the diamonds, the gold.
That's right, that's right.
It's astounding to think that the continent could be so rich, and yet the people who live there could be so poor.
Exactly.
And so I think that it's really about trying to harness that sense, that sense of community to work as one and engage with the world. Can you imagine can you imagine how strong it would be?
No, it'd be amazing, but there's more to it. This is why, this is my new best friend over here, right here, because I'm amazed she got the funding. You know, one of the things we've struggled with the foundation is sometimes getting that first dollar in. You know, we have one project we have in Uganda, and we're doing a huge urban development. It's 130 acres of land in the center of the city of Uganda, in Kampala. And the land was valued about $160 million. And so I thought, right, $160 million, that's proven value. So I want to do a master plan, which is say what I'm going to build on it. I got a really famous architect to do the master plan. So I said, look, go to the bank.
Who is that, by the way?
David Ajay. David Ajay. And I'm going to come to that.
And he just the New York Times just reviewed the building he did in New York City last week. Did you see that?
Yes, absolutely.
The public housing project in New York, which has gotten a lot of acclaim.
Yeah, he's very, very talented talented man.
And he also did the new museum on
exactly.
the African American Museum on the Mall in Washington, D.C.
Exactly.
So the diaspora is coming together.
No, we are. We are definitely doing that. I'm bringing them together, absolutely. But the thing is you got $160 million asset. You go to the bank, you ask for $3 million, you can't get the money. And that's what blows me away. It doesn't matter how big the value of your asset is, that first dollar in you can't get, but anywhere else in the world you can get it. And so that's a fundamental hurdle of unlocking Africa's potential, which is why I set up the foundation to do exactly that, because it was born out of the madness of it.
Well, you know, what he's saying is similar to what you were saying to me before we started this session, and I want to give you a platform to say what you were saying. You want to talk about how African Americans and Africans need to get working together better.
Absolutely. I mean, last year, $48 million. $48 million was spent in Africa on infrastructure throughout the continent. Africa needs to spend about between 90 billion and 100 billion US dollars every year. There's a gap. The numbers vary, but it's anything between 48 and 53. But in essence, because it depends whether you use the World Bank, whether you use the IMF, or whether you use some of the private banks. But there's no doubt. Last year, about 48 billion was spent in Africa on infrastructure. There's a shortfall of about 53 billion that has to be spent. And a large chunk of that comes from the private sector. I think the problem of Africa is not so much the lack of finance. There is money in Africa. Last year, the trade between South Africa alone and Africa was in excess of about $25 billion. A huge chunk of South African companies, you can say the same thing about Nigerian companies too, as well as in Kenya, they are entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. Aliko is doing exceptionally well throughout the continent, is involved in investments in South Africa and other parts of the world. What we need to do is to encourage this process of engagement. Mandela tried, I think a few years when he came out of jail, he was very passionate about building a network between African Americans and business people in Africa. And his starting point was we should try and translate this deep emotional history that we have, where I can talk about South Africa in particular. A lot of inspiration we derived as part of our struggle for freedom and democracy was the civil rights movement in the US. The huge contributions that African Americans in particular made in terms of imposing sanctions, which was an important tool to put pressure on the government and to make them realize that it was important to encourage democracy to take place. Students from Africa who are studying at Harvard, African American students at Harvard have a huge advantage in terms of engaging in Africa, particularly those in business. China and Africa, the trade between China and Africa last year was in excess of 200 billion. The trade between Africa and Europe last year was about 400 billion. The trade between America and Africa can improve. But the point is, if successful entrepreneurs all over the world see opportunities in Africa, it means that we can successfully grow together the business community in Africa, because that's one of the issues that we are trying to push aggressively, is that to get Africa to do more business amongst Africa. The biggest trading partner of America is not China, it's Canada. The biggest trading partner of the European countries is not China either, it's the EU countries. A few years ago, the Minister of Finance from the DRC said to me, Patrice, I've got a daughter who's studying in UCT, University of Cape Town in Johannesburg, and I've got another daughter in Belgium. I can, from the DRC, almost instantaneously transfer money to my daughter in Belgium. It takes a longer time to get my daughter in Cape Town to receive the money that I've transferred to her. So, we are very excited with what we see. When I go and visit some of our shareholders, whether it's in London, New York, Boston, I feel so proud to see young Africans from Nigeria, from Kenya, from Ghana, from South Africa, who are at a very high level at these banks, at these investment banks, at these funds. You know, they got, and African Americans as well, they got there because they through recognition, they distinguished themselves. So we have to continue to try and encourage greater engagement, and maybe at Harvard at some stage come and talk about the African American community, young Africans, how we can start businesses together for those who are interested in business. And it's not just about business, those who are also interested in various other spheres. The future looks, there are challenges. I mean, we've got this problem of Ebola right now, which is doing a huge amount of in terms of the perception of the continent, let alone West Africa. It's taking us backwards. But that aside, we're very confident about the future. Africa has had challenges in the past and has done very well, and Africa will do well in future.
There was a big U.S.-Africa Business Summit in Washington. I think you guys were there as well in August. 54 heads of state from Africa met with President Obama. There was a big business summit as well. I know you were there. Tell us about your meeting with President Obama and what was on the agenda.
Well, it's very exciting. I just want to re-emphasize that I think you and Cheryl and others have a huge, I mean, I was in Atlanta and I go to different parts of the States and I see young African-American entrepreneurs, very excited, very capable, the diaspora as well. I mean, that African successful entrepreneurs in the Caribbean, I mean, Ghana and Nigeria and the continent, exciting, but we should focus on trying to get a greater amount of engagement. You know, we are also busy trying to make a success of our businesses. You know, and we don't allocate sufficient time to recognize that we have a contribution to make to laying the foundation for the engagement and the identification of partnership, as well as for the next generation. The meeting with Barack, very, very good. And what he said to us is, make sure that in your partnerships with China, because China is a big trading partner, Africa needs trading partners from all over the world. You know, whether it's China, whether it's Europe, whether it's Brazil as well. But the African American community, in my mind, has a huge, huge advantage. And we should get that process of talking about forming partnerships together. But Barack is focusing on power. And because there are a number of what they call corridors. And central to what we spoke about, the infrastructure spend, is the need to allocate money for electricity, for power generation, and to build the infrastructure that Africa needs to grow.
I think we'll take 3 questions, and why don't we take all the questions together? We won't answer them individually, so let's get 3 questions, one right after the next.
Hi, thank you all for coming. This is fantastic. My name is Sangu Deli. I'm on the board of the Harvard Black Alumni Society. My question is, in the next 2 decades, there's going to be 1 billion people, young people in Africa. Africa is going to have the youngest workforce. And if we look at our economic growth has been extraordinary, but how are we, the growth of young people and the demographic shift is actually going to put us in a position where if we don't create enough jobs and create enough infrastructure to handle that, it could be a huge bottleneck for us. And we've seen what happens when you have masses of young unemployed people. So what are your thoughts around how we can deal with this potentially imminent good thing for us in terms of young people, but also potential challenge? Thank you.
You're looking at me. I think they'll answer.
Okay, good. That's question 1. We're going to take another question right there. The first question is about dealing with young people.
Good question.
Thanks. I think Sangu took a part of my question, unfortunately, but please do answer that one. I think similarly, beyond the vehicles for youth employment, thinking about the level of investment, so whether it's from African Americans or it's thinking about rural populations in Africa, how are we, I guess, going to create the vehicles to actually make it happen? So I think the high-level conversations in Washington, D.C., in Lagos, wherever else, are very helpful, and I think all of us are part of a community that I think end up in the 1% of earners in sub-Saharan Africa. How do we actually engage and actually develop partnerships that work with a broader set of people, with people who are maybe not in the room?
Okay, and why don't we take one over on this side of the room? I see a gentleman in the middle right there.
Thank you very much. I'm Jacob. Thank you very much, sir. My name is Afosa Ojamo. I'm the co-president of the Africa Business Club at the Business School. Over the last 10 years, foreign direct investment in Africa has quadrupled, and it looks like it's going to continue to grow. Are any of you worried about the growth in FDI that's happening in Africa? And how can we incentivize local Africans to invest their funds and money in Africa, as opposed to FDI cultivating a lot of the growth?
Okay, thank you. So we have three questions that kind of fit nicely together. The first question is about the tremendous growth in the youth population. Moving forward, we've all heard the statistics. We know that Africa by 2050 is going to have more young people than any other part of the world. The world's youth will be primarily African, will outnumber the rest of the world. In fact, another interesting statistic I heard to that point was that in 2014, there will be more... 2014, correctly, this year, there are more babies being born in Nigeria than all of Europe combined, which is quite So we want to, how are you going to address the development challenges there? The second question related to that is, what are the specific plans for operationalizing these development activities? And the third question is about FDI and how do we encourage Africans to invest, not just outsiders. So who wants to start with any of these questions?
Okay. So from the youth perspective, I think we've got to inspire the youth. So from Made in Africa Foundation, we're looking at doing a series of concerts across the continent, which basically communicate that Africa's got a great future, and it's directed at youth to get them motivated and inspired that the future for Africa is great, and kind of lay out some facts of what's happening, because the issue is the communication is key, because to keep up with this growth of youth and employment is a real issue. And I think is once they feel that there's a future and they can be a part of it and have a voice, then I think that will contain the problem. So for Made in Africa, that's what we're planning to do, and then outline some things that are happening, because a lot of the time there's some great things happening in the continent, but they're just not communicated. And so that's again about this whole rebranding and PR exercise that needs to be done. So that's from the foundation's perspective, that's how we're seeing the youth. In terms of the issue of the buckets and structure, I think that's something that Patrice and maybe myself and you can talk about, buckets, because there's definitely need to create some buckets of, right, okay, so we want to change Africa because we know that infrastructure is a key issue, right? We know what the gap is, and the main reason for that is most of the projects are not properly packaged, so you can't get the right financing. So that's a key issue, which is even with Obama's power project, the power initiative, he's got all his money, but he doesn't know where to put it because no one's presenting him the right package deal. So it's a classic, which is why I'm back to my lady over here. She's been able to pull that one off, so that's really good. But but that's really what the issue is, and that will create the right buckets for maybe an organization here in America where people put a fund into a bucket to help finance these projects.
Patrice?
When I look at the challenge of the large youth population and the need for job creation, the traditional modes of employment in Africa just do not have enough capacity to absorb the masses that are migrating from the rural to the urban areas, or the number of people that are graduating from the educational institutions. What I see is really a need to provide empowerment for the young people through better educational outcomes, really, and different kinds of education, more entrepreneurial education, more vocational education, more artisanal skills, so that they can create small businesses and work across the continent to shape their own economic outcomes. Unless we do that, I don't think there's any large structure that can come in and really mop up all the unemployment that exists around the continent. So it really needs to be a broad, mass-based approach that reaches or is available to almost every young person. And for those who are so motivated or who step up to the challenge, then they can lead the effort to create those new businesses and opportunities whereby they create more employment on the continent. There are vehicles, and you're seeing more vehicles, you're seeing more diaspora coming in, there are private equity funds, there are microfinance banks, nearly not enough. There are incubators to support what's going on the continent. If the macroeconomics remain in place, which is the forecast for the next few years, then I think within that we need to empower the young people to shape their own outcomes, and I think that's the only way, through education and basic infrastructure, electricity, security, sustenance of democracy, where we can change the story of the burgeoning African youth population.
Patrice?
One of the things Africa can learn from China is that China introduced a policy many, many years ago that was focused on consistent, aggressive growth. Africa will not be able to create the sort of deal with the challenges that confronts us in terms of jobs for our huge emerging youth if there isn't going to be an absolutely focused but also a very aggressive strategy to ensure that the African economies grow, and South Africa has got about 60 million people. We've got to change also the focus of investment rather than individual countries looking at attracting investments for itself. We need to have a regional, SADC, an African approach, and I'm very confident based on what I'm seeing that side by side with education, but we also have to educate our youth in those sectors that have a future. I love theology and I love the social sciences. And those who study theology must pray for us because we need their prayers. But they call it STEM here: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Absolutely, absolutely crucial. Because one of the mistakes between Africa, and we see it, from the Family Foundation, is that there are lots of students who get exceptionally good marks, but in sectors of the economy that are not growing, where there isn't new employment. The other thing Africa has to do, you spoke about FDI. When I talk to some of the wonderful African American brothers here, it's a wonderful emotional talk. We have to do business together, we've got to invest, wonderful. And then we go our separate ways. And then we meet a year again, oh, my brother, we've got this wonderful history, and it's incredible how much we share in common. It is absolutely, I always laugh when I see some of these African American stars walk. They walk like they're in Africa. They walk like,
and dance the same way too.
And they dance the same. But the other thing as well is ask yourself, who are the most successful 20 African American entrepreneurs in America? And we should have an engagement that I think has got two levels to it. Number one is, how much of them do business amongst themselves in America? Forget about Africa. And the second issue is we must encourage them. And the difference for Africa is Africa should not look at a sort of an exclusive growth process. We should not set up Africa as an area only for African Americans, because that'll, it's not, we can't do what other people do. I don't know, say, it's about, let me take a bad example. Assuming I was from Korea, for example, and I said, we are going to encourage the Koreans in America to do trade only with Korea. It's okay. But if Africans do that, it's not in our interest. We've got to have a broader approach that includes everybody, with a clear recognition that there is indeed a deep, deep emotional connection, a huge history with African Americans. But let me also say something about South Africa. We are now in the majority, or we are now in government. The blacks in South Africa have no future if they don't create a future for whites. Yeah. So part of the growth of black people in South Africa, and these are some of the things that Mandela used to teach us, the majority of the poor is still African. 90% of the poor, 95% is still black, is still African. We cannot give those people a future if we don't side by side with it give every white South African a future to make him believe that South Africa is the best place for him to live. So when it comes to African Americans, absolutely we should encourage that, but also it must be part of a process where we trade with America as a whole. But we've got to become more focused and talk about specific partnership in specific industries and specific deals that we can do together.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank the three of you for making my little dream come true in speaking to the organizers of this conference. I take great pleasure in working in the continent and seeing all of you in your home countries, and it's just fantastic to have you on home territory here at Harvard University, and to be able to share your perspectives, to share the exciting opportunities, the exciting accomplishments, and I just thank you for making the long trek to be here and to share with the African American community at Harvard University all that you're doing on the continent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were great, as always.
Thank you, Mr. Motsepe, Ms. Opeke, and Mr. Boateng, and of course, Ms. Clarke. Give them another round of applause, please. I'd like to call to the stage my fellow Harvard Black Alumni Society board member, and he was just named 30 under 30 of the most promising young entrepreneurs in Africa for 2014. He was on the cover of Forbes magazine. He's also a TED Fellow, just named a TED Fellow. And he previously worked at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Valiant Capital Partners, and is currently an MBA candidate. JD and MBA? Okay, take them all. At Harvard. Mr. Sangudeli, please come up.
Thank you. It is my utmost pleasure and honor to present the Harvard University Veritas Award for Excellence in Global Business and Philanthropy. This award is presented to Patrice Motsepe in recognition of your pioneering career achievements in the finance and mining industry, and for being an outstanding catalyst for global socio-economic change on this 11th day of October 2014, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Please now welcome Ifosa Ajoma, Chair of the Africa Business Club at Harvard Business School. Please come up, please.
Thank you very much. It is also my pleasure to present the Harvard University Veritas Award for Excellence in Information and Communication Technology. This award is presented to Funke Opeke in recognition for your pioneering career achievements in the telecommunications industry and for being an outstanding catalyst for global social economic change on this 11th day of October 2014, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
You know, when I first saw A Man's Story, I said, I've got to meet Ozwald Boateng some way. And Teresa Clarke, thank you so much for bringing up this wonderful idea of bringing the best, the very best that Africa has to offer to our stage here today. It is my distinct honor to present the Harvard University Veritas Award for Excellence in Fashion Design and Global Socioeconomic Development to Dr. Ozwald Boateng, OBE, in recognition of your pioneering career achievements in the fashion industry and for being an outstanding catalyst for global socioeconomic development. Please accept your award. And lastly, please welcome Colette Bishongo, Chair of the Africa Student Association at Harvard College.
Good afternoon. It is my honor to present the Harvard University Alumni Award for Excellence in International Journalism to Teresa Clarke, in recognition of your pioneering career achievements in journalism and for being an outstanding catalyst for global socio-economic change on this day, the 11th of October 2014. Okay, thank you.
We'd like to thank everyone for coming to this landmark historical event here at Harvard University. And enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you at the gala later on. Thank you again.